Hello everybody, Doc Scantlin here. I'm making a little movie about my mandolin. It's a mandolin I made over the course of 4 years, working part-time on it, while I was musical instrument repairman from, I guess I started doing that in 1964 through about 1983. I think I finished this mandolin around 1982, 83. I'd worked 4 years on it, off and on, part-time. I started it when I was working for George Gruen at Gruen Guitars, and I moved to Nashville, 77, I believe, worked for Tut Taylor. It was a wonderful place to work. Tut and his son Mark and the whole Taylor family. Johnny Hutto was making mandolins there. I learned a lot from Johnny. What a sweet guy that was. Johnny, good friend. We'd go to bluegrass festivals together. Johnny always had his big white cowboy hat and his white Cadillac car, and some fun times. Working at Gruen's later, I started this mandolin, and that was an incredible experience working for George Gruen. George Gruen was a genius. George Gruen was the encyclopedia of vintage string instruments. Knew everything about them. Knew all the instruments he had probably ever seen in his whole life, and he probably still does. Probably remembers every single one. He's got a photographic memory. He's a genius. And he's also a wonderful guy, and I really enjoyed working for that man. He treated his employees so well, and he really loved his repairmen. So I worked in the repair shop. It was an interesting time because there was some people that, names you might remember that I worked with there. John Graven, I worked in another shop. He had just left George and was working at another shop, but he did work for George, so I worked with him for a short time doing work for George, but not at the store. And then I moved into the store and worked in the repair shop up on the third floor. And Kim Walker was there. Marty Lanham was there. I'm going to forget some names. Scott. I can't think of Scott's last name. Doggone it. Really sweet. All sweet people. And I'll think of them as I make some more movies about my days in Nashville and being a repairman. But it was a particularly fond memory to work for George Gruen. I just want to say that. That was a particular high point in my life in general. And I started this mandolin, and I wanted to make this mandolin because I wanted to make musical instruments. I always wanted to do it since the folk music revival in the 60s. I was a teenager, and I got sucked right into that. And we were all doing either Kumbaya or Rabbit in the Log and I Ain't Got My Dog with the Stanley Brothers. So there was a whole range of music going on, and it all went back to acoustic string musical instruments. So I got that bug, played guitar a little bit and fiddle and banjo and whatever. And I decided I'm going to head, well, I got my Whole Earth catalog, so I was ready to head for the woods, build a cabin, and build musical instruments, which I actually did for a while, and then decided to come back to civilization. And so at Gruen Guitars, I started this mandolin based on the Gibson L5, the famous Gibson L5 style that was that evolved to this style, essentially this style, and that was in the early 1920s. So this was, when I saw this picture of this style of mandolin in a catalog, a Gibson catalog in the 70s, I couldn't believe how beautiful this was. And after a period of time, I said, I'm going to make one. And I believe the main reasons I wanted to make one is because it's the hardest instrument to make. It definitely is. Carved top, carved back from big planks of wood, and scrolls here, and fancy stuff up here, and it's just complicated. So I had that challenge. If I was going to make an instrument, I was going to start right at the top. I'm not taking anybody's advice about, well, you start, make a cigar box guitar, and then maybe make a ukulele, and make a flat top guitar real plain, and develop your skills and learn things. No, I'm going right to the top. So that's what I did. That was me, and I made this mandolin. So now, after stopping repairing for 35 years to lead an orchestra, which was a hobby that got out of control, I've retired from that, and now I want to go up in my shop and make instruments again. I've got my tools, I've got my wood, I've kept abreast of what's been going on with the American luthier scene. I've kept my subscription of fine woodworking. I kept going on the internet to see what was happening, how to do this, how to do that, what was the new designs, what was the new procedures of building and woodworking in general, and music, things like intonation and all the aspects of a musical instrument that a builder would be interested in. Repairing was also always very lucrative. I remember in the early 80s at Picker Supply in Fredericksburg, where I ended up after Nashville, and I was making $60 an hour. And that was in the, of course I didn't get to keep all of that. I'll back up a little bit. But that's what we charged, and it was no problem. Everybody thought it was fine. And that was in the early 80s, so I'd work 2 or 3 hours a day and, hey, have fun. Played music, had a lot of fun, but always thought at some point in my life I would get back to seriously building musical instruments, because I had a lot of ideas. I had a lot of things that I repaired over the years that I didn't like, and I said, why did this get popular? Why? Lots of whys. And repairing instruments, you also get to see a lot of the defects that over the years, and some of it had been corrected, and some I still think are defects. People still buy the instruments, but anyway, I said, well, you know what? I can do better than that. I can do better than that. I got an idea here. I got an idea there. Maybe they all won't work, but I'm going to try them. So, quite excited about it. And, well, let's get back to the mandolin. I wanted to show this mandolin. As I said, 1922, they redesigned the Gibson mandolins. They were, the ones prior to this model were very similar, but they had an oval hole here. So when they came out with this model, I think it came out in 1923 actually, this to this day is the mandolin that everybody looks at as the pinnacle of the mandolin. So let's go over a couple points here. I can't really play the mandolin, but it does sound. Whatever that is. You know what's funny about musical instruments? Everybody talks about tone, but when you go online, when you go to a party, when you pull out your instrument, they all work. They all sound like mandolins and guitars. They don't sound like piccolos and sousaphones. But it's that look at this, and notice the word look. So much, in my opinion, is about the looks. So I wanted to make sure that visually this instrument had, to me, a pleasing look. Now, one of the things I did differently was I bound the F-holes. These are the F-holes here. So I put binding around. The original ones did not have the binding. I also changed the bridge. I never liked the adjustable bridges. I thought they were a stupid idea. And contrary to the physics of sound transmission. And I developed this, well, I didn't develop it. I really just pretty much copied it from the violin family. But since the mandolin bridge is much lower, I had to adapt it a bit. And I liked it. And I put it on a lot of mandolins when I was at Picker Supply in Fredericksburg. And I put it on a lot of archtop guitars. And the overwhelming opinion was that, boy, did that bridge make a difference. So that was nice. So I did a few things different. The fretboard is oval. It's not perfectly flat, more like a guitar or a steel string guitar. And that was something different. I never knew anybody to make a mandolin with an oval fingerboard at that time. I know I've seen some since. The peg head I did a little differently. I think it's a bit longer. And it's a little bit, the shape is a little different. If you didn't really put mine and a Gibson right side by side, you probably wouldn't notice the difference unless you did that. But this is curved a little bit, and Gibson was perfectly straight, and I never liked that. That bothered me, that perfectly straightness. So I curved mine a little bit. Let's see what else I can show you. Always have been a sucker for figured maple. So I found some nice maple wood to make this out of. And again, this back is carved from a big plank, 2 big planks, and joined in the center. When Okay, over here are what's called the points in the mandolin world. And on the Gibson mandolins, they would just kind of, this right here is a little channel where it goes in and comes back up. You see that. So on the Gibson mandolins, this channel would just keep going flat. It's kind of flat and maybe even kind of rolled back like this a little bit. Well, I never liked that at all. I said, once you start your channel, you got to keep it going. So I did that on mine. So you'll see my points flare out and the flare out. It's not a big deal. It doesn't make that much difference, but it's just one of those things. I wanted to have my touches. I had my ideas, but I mostly copied the 1923 Gibson F5 mandolin. The tailpiece was engraved by my brother. My brother is an engraver and also does restoration for Rolls-Royce dashboards, wooden dashboards and wooden trim around the windows on Rolls-Royce antique cars. But he was working at the Bureau of Engraving at the time in Washington, D.C., where he really made the money. And he engraved this this tailpiece for me, which I thought was a masterpiece. Let me see if you can see it. Okay, so that's the mandolin. I'm going to be putting some more movies on as time goes by. I'm making an archtop guitar, pretty much a Super 400 scaled down just ever so slightly based on the original Super 400 before the really went into production. So there's some differences. I'll show you about those. And I'm getting ready pretty soon to glue the top on. I have the back glued on to the sides and the neck almost done. And I will show you some of the pieces and make a couple comments about that. And as I go along, I'm going to add some more movies of my progress on that instrument. I got to tell you a funny story about this finish. This finish was from a spray can that I bought at Walmart probably, and that's probably my one regret about finishing this mandolin with the spray can of lacquer. It's okay, but there's tiny little checks everywhere that developed over the years. Now, a lot of people think that's just fine, but I would rather not have had that happen. But anyway, not a big deal. So anyway, Doc Scantlin here, and hope you all are having a wonderful time. I'll make some more movies of Doc and his quest to build some musical instruments for fun, but probably not for much profit. All right, have a good day. Ta-ta.